Ladies and gentlemen, a very good day to all of you. It is immense pleasure to welcome you on board to this one-of-a-kind webinar. Let me break it to you, ladies and gentlemen. All of you here are in for a really interesting and knowledgeable session. To begin with, I would like to put things into perspective. This webinar is part of a series kick-started with the intent to disseminate information regarding several countries' immigration programs. Our group CEO, Mr. Imran Farooq, is the brain behind the series, so as to provide options to people looking for second citizenship from the comforts of their home and offices. I am immensely pleased to introduce our first guest, Honorable Mr. Gaston Browne. Mr. Browne is the Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda. He is also Prime Minister, a Minister of Finance, Corporate Governance, and Public-Private Partnerships. In his tenure, Mr. Browne served as Commercial Banking Manager for a major banking groups in Antigua and Barbuda. It comprised of offshore and onshore banks and trust companies, and it managed in excess of $400 million of investment in Antigua and Barbuda. On becoming the Prime Minister, the Caribbean heads of government appointed him to have lead responsibility for financial risk matters, for cricket, for aviation, and even de-risking the cabinet of the CARICOM. Our second guest speaker for the evening is Ms. Charmaine. She holds a distinction of being the first national of Antigua and Barbuda and the first woman as well to head the country's Citizenship by Investment unit. Her appointment as CEO took effect on the 27th of March 2017. Prior to her appointment, Mrs. Quinlan served in the CIU in 3 prominent capacities. She was the Chief Compliance Officer, she was the Chief Operating Officer, and Acting Chief Executive Officer. She's also a Chartered Director and a fully qualified anti-money laundering specialist. We have with us Mr. Imran Farooq. He is the CEO of AAA Associates and ARY-AAA Associates that comes under the umbrella of Samana Group of Companies. Mr. Farooq is having more than 20 years of experience in business immigration. The group of companies renders not only business immigration, it does business management, it does real estate, and it all comes under one umbrella with a complete professional approach. I would like to call upon Mr. Gaston Browne to take the floor and address the audience. Mr. Browne, all over to you, please.
Thank you very much, Rita. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen. My understanding is that I should be giving an overview of Antigua and Barbuda about the socioeconomic infrastructure and to speak briefly about COVID. So Antigua and Barbuda has been the fastest growing economy within the OECS Caribbean and easily one of the fastest growing economies within the Western Hemisphere. In fact, in 2018, we posted a growth rate of 7.4%, which was the 10th fastest growth rate within the entire world. So we have a very vibrant economy, one that is pro-business, and we certainly have a very active multicultural society, a melting pot of a number of nationalities and cultures, to the extent that Antiguans and Barbudans are most welcoming to visitors and to new citizens. In fact, the majority of our country's population comprises immigrants, and that tells you how welcoming Antiguans and Barbudans have been to visitors and certainly to new citizens. Now, the country enjoys a superior socioeconomic infrastructure compared to other OECS Caribbean countries. And those are the countries that provide CIP programs, Citizenship by Investment programs. So for example, we have easily the most modern airport within the OECS Caribbean, which provides a gateway to major cities in Europe, North America, include the United States, Canada, and several other gateways. In fact, Maliat, the regional airline, even though it's in administration at this point, is domiciled here in Antigua and Barbuda, so that connectivity between Antigua and Barbuda and the rest of the Caribbean is extremely easy as a result of the fact that 𝐿IAT is based here. In fact, our government is now moving to take over the entire shareholding of 𝐿IAT. So 𝐿IAT will be practically 100% owned by the government and people of Antigua and Barbuda. Now, we also enjoy a well-developed healthcare sector. We have facilities, several tertiary healthcare facilities, providing up to 3 beds per 1,000, which is easily one of the highest within the region. The average globally is about 2 beds per 1,000. And our healthcare facilities include a cancer center, a stem cell therapy hospital, an infectious disease center. In fact, the infectious disease center was developed specifically as part of our response to COVID. And that is a 17-bed hospital equipped with all of the modern ventilators and other equipment to treat infectious diseases. We also are presently building out a cardiac unit as well as a renal unit, which will give us a complete healthcare facility in which we can cater not only for the citizens and residents of Antigua and Barbuda, but others within the Caribbean region. So far as our educational infrastructure is concerned, we certainly enjoy the presence of 3 medical schools, and we're the only country within the OASIS Caribbean that has a university campus. Presently, we're hosting the Fort Landed campus of the University of the West Indies. And Charmaine will speak more about the investment in the university option, which in essence, is designed to improve the global competitiveness of Antigua and Barbuda and OASIS Caribbean as a whole, because research would have shown that the OASIS Caribbean, they have had the lowest percentage of enrollment in tertiary education within this hemisphere. So Antigua and Barbuda has actually stepped up to the plate to provide greater access for the citizens of Antigua and Barbuda and the wider OASIS Caribbean. So in order to ensure that that option is funded, we have made it extremely attractive so that the university can attract a significant amount of funds to ensure that it could deliver the best tertiary education within the region and beyond. We also have easily the best cruise and cargo port facilities. We just spent $200 million to redevelop our cruise port facility and the cargo port facility. And again, we have a well-developed socioeconomic infrastructure. Even our broadband services, we are presently spending $50 million to make it easily the best broadband and the most affordable within the entire Caribbean region. So citizens of this country should feel comfortable that they will be living in a country or have the opportunity to live in a country that has a well-developed socioeconomic infrastructure and one that could provide a significant amount of economic opportunities for them. We also recently introduced a nomad residency visa program in which we're targeting wealthy individuals and knowledge workers to reside here and to enjoy up to 2 to 3 years residency for a small nominal fee. A family, for example, of 4 would pay a maximum of about $600. So it's relatively inexpensive, and we are seeking the opportunity to attract very wealthy people and knowledge workers to work remotely from Antigua and Barbuda in a very safe environment. And as I speak to the safety of the environment, we enjoy the lowest level of crime and violence within the entire Caribbean, and this is no exaggeration. Typically, we have had no more than maybe a handful of homicides. And insofar as COVID is concerned, Antigua and Barbuda today is one of the safest countries within the entire Caribbean. So, for example, we reopened our country's borders on June 1st after a brief temporary lockdown of a couple of weeks. And since then, we have imported approximately 70 new COVID cases, but all of the individuals have recovered to the extent
133 going.
To the extent that as of today, we have 0 active COVID case on the island. So in essence, we're COVID free, even though our borders remain, totally open. So from the standpoint of the management of COVID, we've done an excellent job making the country safe, not only for citizens and residents, but also for visitors. And insofar as our governance is concerned, our government is an entrepreneurial government that continues to seek new investments, one that is also innovative. We also provide very strong, transparent, and accountable governance to the extent that our CIP program has consistently been voted the best globally as the most transparent and accountable program. And we continue to provide good value for money. And I'm confident that the program here in Antigua and Barbuda provides best value for money for investors. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Honorable Mr. Gaston Browne. It was a pleasure listening to you. Now, I would like to request Ms. Charmaine to share insights on the Antigua and Barbuda Citizenship by Investment Program. Ms. Charmaine, the floor is for you, please.
Thank you, Rita. Really appreciate. Prime Minister, thank you very much for your very timely remarks. I just want to frame the wonderful opportunity that we offer as a Citizenship by Investment Program. We have 4 options, but today I'd really like to focus on 2. The real estate, because there were some recent changes in that option, as well as the University of the West Indies option that the Prime Minister spoke about earlier. As it relates to the real estate option, we now have 3 pathways for persons to apply. You can either apply as a single applicant at a price point of $400,000. You can also pair your application with another related party, and each of you would make an investment of $200,000. Most recently, we have created a 3rd pathway based on requests from the industry, which is a single application at $200,000. As it relates to the UWI option, we are arguably the best option for large families. There's nowhere else you can go and be able to apply with 5 others of your family members and be able to pay only $150,000. And with that option, you are able to obtain 1 year free tuition for one of your dependents who is at university age. Now, the thrust for this particular option is to obtain the much needed financing to continue the university based on the administrative expenses and the expansion agenda for the government as it relates to the university. The University of the West Indies is in the top 5 percentiles of universities worldwide, meaning it is really a big deal in our area. Actually, I am an alumni of the University of the West Indies university. And we feel that bringing the university here, because Antigua is uniquely placed in the middle of the archipelago, we will allow other neighboring persons desirous of attending the university to take just a short trip over to Antigua and be able to benefit from this tertiary opportunity. We are also very happy to share this with our prospective citizenship applicants so that they too can benefit from this option. As it relates to the benefit of applying to this program, we have the strongest passport at this point. We have visa-free access to over 165 countries, and I know that most persons who are desirous of second citizenship are looking mainly for mobility. The Prime Minister spoke earlier of how safe Antigua is. So that is another reason for you to choose the Antigua program. We are safe in terms of crime, and the government has done a tremendous job with managing the COVID pandemic. And so, as he indicated earlier, we are now COVID-free. What I'd also like to share with you is that this program is extremely responsive. As soon as we heard about the COVID-19 pandemic, the management team came together to look at how we'd still be able to provide this valuable service to persons who are desirous of applying to the program. And we came together and looked at the documentary requirements for the program, and we streamlined it based on the stages of your application. So no longer are you required to submit all of the documents at the beginning of the application process. We have communicated to the agents and stakeholders which are the primary documents that are required to be submitted to commence the due diligence exercise. Once the due diligence exercise is completed and we are about to make an approval, then a further set of documents are required. And then once there's an approval, further set of documents required for the banking and passport processes. We have also done a lot of work to re-engineer the application process. The files are now electronically submitted, and this is not just for COVID-19. This is something that will be a feature continually. Additionally, we've really worked hard on ensuring that we are as efficient as possible. We're now seeing approvals within 6 to 8 weeks. So we're definitely processing average the applications in less than 3 months. So I just really want to underscore, because I know that we want to focus on answering your specific questions. I want to underscore that this is by far the best program that you can apply to. There's nowhere else you can find more attractive or more affordable options than the Antigua and Barbuda program. Thank you. Rita, I think your mic is off.
Thank you so much, Ms. Charmaine, for this insight. I would like to invite Mr. Imran on board and discuss about the programs, the company itself, and how good we can take ahead with this webinar right now.
Thank you, Rita. Thank you very much, Charmaine, CEO of Citizenship by Investment Unit. Thank you very much, Honorable Prime Minister, Mr. Gaston, Browne, on enlightening us on our viewers on Antigua and Barbuda Citizenship Program. Also explaining us that how the applications are dealt post-pandemic, because it's a great move that the government has recognized that it's very difficult for a lot of people to collect those documentation, go through the verification process, and it's a great idea and initiative to take applications online and speed up the process. And in the due course, the application will follow. So by this statement, I'm not creating an impression that the requirements have gone down. It just has become a smoother. And that's the reason we have witnessed a great volume. I would like to admit that my personal favorite is the university option. So, which is a great initiative. And so my compliment on Antigua and Barbuda Citizenship by Investment Unit and government for coming up with this innovative option. My strongest suggestion, Prime Minister, is that you should consider family of 4 and single applicant for this option, because that's going to give us new volume, and a lot of people are going to take it seriously. You know, you would be surprised that there are a lot of single applicant out there who want the passport and the university option. So that is something which I'm going to send you a detailed email to look into it, and
we look forward.
Market is receptive about that.
Very good.
Thank you. Before we go to the Q&A session, I know all of you know AAA Group very well. We have a strong footprint in the market, but those of you who don't know about AAA, I'll run through AAA very briefly. We're the largest immigration company in the Middle East, AAA Group. And we have dealt with 10,000 plus applications. So this is what I keep telling, that every application is quite unique, but we have dealt with so many applications. The chances is that we have dealt with your kind of application, whether it's a personal issue, whether it's a proof of funds, or you have an issue with getting a police clearance report or certain documentation in certain countries, because the volume this team has handled so much. We are multilingual, English of course, Arabic, Chinese, Russian, Urdu, Hindi, and we speak all kinds of languages. That's the edge of us being in Dubai. We have state-of-the-art enterprise level planning solution, and that ERP, which improves our communication with the client. And because we are dealing with different time zone, the ERP implementation makes sure that the Caribbean office puts the update in the system, and in the morning in Dubai or rest of the part of the world, wherever your officers are, they can check the update and notify you immediately. By far, we have the biggest footprint, biggest operations, and biggest manpower in business. So with this, I'll start the question and answer session. Prime Minister and Charmaine, with your permission, because I know if I want to add to people will ask you questions directly, but if I feel that if I want to further clarify, can I do so?
Sure.
Sure. So Rida, let's start the question and answer session, please.
Thank you so much, sir. We are having a lot of questions and a lot of people are joining in. Our first question I would like Mr. Browne to answer, if possible, please. Having the international airport in the Caribbean, so I'm assuming Antigua is the only Caribbean island that has an international airport. Triumphs has asked a question that, does that make it stronger when it comes to the passport itself? Because people would like to have a passport of a country where they actually have an international airport and they travel and they land there.
Right, so there are several countries within the Caribbean. In fact, most of them do have international airports, but within the OASIS Caribbean, we have easily the most developed facility with greater connectivity than any other within the OASIS Caribbean. So in terms of moving directly from different destinations in Antigua and Barbuda, there's greater accessibility. That in itself obviously provides greater convenience for our citizens compared to other countries that do not have a similar facility.
I would like to add that having an international airport versus some other countries actually makes it simpler, that you can fly in directly Antigua and Barbuda. So your 5 days requirement stays like 5 days. So maybe 6-7 days you can turn around. Because
exactly. But you may be pleased to know too that we have suspended the 5-day requirement during this period of COVID. So, you know, there's no possibility of any violation based on the fact that someone may be unable to travel at this time. That requirement has been suspended.
Excellent, great time. Yes, sir.
Thank you so much, Prime Minister. Ms. Charmaine, if you don't mind, can you add up to it when Honorable Mr. Browne has mentioned that 5 days stay in 5 years is temporarily suspended? That's what I understand. Is it for people who are actually in the 5 years time frame now, or is there a limitation to it, or this is until pandemic is over something?
Okay, so currently those persons who have reached their 5 years and they're now looking to renew their passport, we have suspended the requirement for them to actually visit the country. Currently, we are looking at suspending it for the period up until the 31st of August 2021. However, as I said earlier, we are a very responsive country. So if it is that when we look at that suspension around that time frame and we realize that an extension is needed, the government will certainly do that.
Thank you so much. So I'm assuming something like that. I'm sorry.
I was going to say competitive pressures may force us to extend that deadline.
So what we understand from here is it's one of the strongest Caribbean islands, considering that the passport is very strong. They have a very strong international traveling facility available. And I'm sure people who would like to travel to other Caribbean islands actually have to land to Antigua and then take a domestic flight and then travel. That's how it is.
Right.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you so much, both of you. Sir, would you like to add something here, Mr. Farooq?
No, I think this is a great move. As I said, these are timely moves, making the application online and understanding that it is practically very difficult. I know people can still make it, but it's not the best of the time where people want to do the 5 days. So my compliments on a timely move.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. We move on to the next question. How effectively has Antigua dealt with COVID-19? I am assuming all the participants have already answered that. But I will rephrase it this way. I would like to ask the question, if you don't mind, Ms. Charmaine and Honorable Prime Minister, both of you can add to it how well efficiently we can now go ahead with the application programs for Antigua and Barbuda, considering the current pandemic and the COVID situations.
Okay, Charmaine, you want to lead in that?
Sure, no problem. So I think the entire world was watching on the developments that emanated from Wuhan since December 2019. And I have to say that this country was very proactive. We thought of the various possibilities before. We knew eventually we would receive some cases of COVID, given that the global community has been made so small now based on the availability of travel. And so the government would have sat together, and the PM will speak more on that, would have sat together to look at the countrywide response and the preparations. And at the Citizenship by Investment unit, we sat down and looked to see how we were able to continue to add value and provide superior service, even if a decision was taken to lock down the country. So we were already pilot testing our electronic file submission application, and we had persons testing it for us to give us feedback. The intention was always to allow an electronic platform, but COVID kind of caused us to speed up the rollout. And I'm really happy to say that the response has been just really awesome in terms of how quickly now persons are able to submit their files. They're able to monitor the progress of their files through the online system. And we have been getting really good feedback about how we've streamlined the application submission process, made it so much easier for persons who wish to apply.
So if I may add here that the CRU unit in Antigua was never closed. There has been continuous service, so there's reliability of service. In the case of Antigua and Barbuda, we took the decision that we had to keep the country's borders open, that we had to balance lives and livelihoods, and that what was important was for us to manage risk. Now, there are some countries in the OASIS Caribbean and even the wider Caribbean that have had a low amount of COVID cases. But in terms of the management of COVID, there is no other country within the Caribbean that would have managed COVID the way in which we have. So for example, our borders, as I said earlier, were fully reopened to international flights, and we have been importing new COVID cases, but have managed them so effectively that there has been little or no domestic transmission, to the extent that today we are COVID-free. So we've been able to isolate those individuals who are positive for COVID and to prevent any domestic transmission. So we continue to receive tourists from the United States, from Florida, which is a hotbed, from Canada, the United Kingdom. But at the same time, we have been managing the risk and ensuring that there's no transfer or transmission of COVID to the domestic population. So our healthcare facility has been fully tested. There are others that have remained closed, and they have low levels of COVID importation because they have not taken on the risk. We have taken on the risk and have managed the risk effectively. And again, to repeat, at this point, we are COVID-free.
Thank you so much. So healthcare is at its best, considering that you guys have actually changed the policies or halted the policies for a certain time frame, considering that people are not allowed to fly in, or they would not like you would not like people to fly in, and the renewal process will not be hampered based on that.
No, I mean, initially we were taking passengers without a COVID test, and they test when they get here. In fact, on one occasion during that period, we had 39 cases from one batch of tests. But we were able to manage those cases to the effect that there was little or no domestic transmission. We changed the policy to ensure that there's testing before arrival. But even with that policy, we still have a few from time to time that would have tested positive by the time they get here, even though they may have had a negative COVID test before. But the key issue is to manage that risk and to make sure that there is no domestic transmission. And I think we've done an excellent job in that regard.
I have to agree, Prime Minister.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Honorable Prime Minister. Thank you, Ms. Charmaine. Mr. Farooq, I think that's an excellent news that A, they're COVID-free, they have their international borders open now, and clients don't have to travel to get a renewal done.
Correct.
Yes, that's true. Rida, I think people want to get over with COVID because they have heard enough COVID worldwide. To the Citizenship by Investment program where people are attending this, yeah?
Thank you so much. Moving on to the next question, I think we've discussed a lot of pandemic, but still we have a question, and I will ask Ms. Charmaine please to answer it if possible. The question is this, but I'll still rephrase it. So I'll read the actual question first. How badly has the pandemic affected the application process? Let's rephrase it and make it positive. What are the positive attributes that the pandemic has brought to the application process? Like it has become electronic, it has become faster, and we just discussed a very nice point above ahead.
Yes, I have to agree with you, Rita. Let's look at the positives. We continue to receive applications, and that's a huge positive for us. Additionally, COVID has taught us that they can look at this thing. And so in addition to streamlining the process, we've become very flexible. Take, for instance, prior to the pandemic, we were requesting 2-year bank statements. We're now accepting 6-month bank statements because we know persons are not able to go in person to the bank for the bank to generate the 2 years banking activity. We have allowed them to use their online banking and submit the information to us. So what we've been doing is to find better ways to serve the clients through this program while still ensuring that we maintain the high standard of due diligence that we've always employed.
Thank you so much. Honorable Prime Minister, would you like to add something to it?
Well, again, the CI unit has done an excellent job. I made a point earlier that they never closed. The unit remained open during the period, and they accepted applications electronically. They were able to process them on a timely basis. So I think that during the period of COVID, we would have seen an increase, or let's say an improvement in the efficiency within the unit, which was quite surprising because in other countries, they had closed the units temporarily. So COVID in itself was a blessing in disguise in terms of the improvement to our program.
I would like to thank Ms. Charmaine for that. So to keeping the work active and people active and the application processing.
Thank you, no problem. We know how important this program is to our country, and so we wanted to ensure that we were still able to perform even as the country was on a lockdown.
Thank you so much. Mr. Farooq, isn't that an excellent news that they were still operational even despite the fact everything was closed around the world?
Yes, that's a great news. And more than that, I think it's very shocking for the entire industry that how people kept on applying during this worst financial crisis time and the pandemic time. So a lot of people lost money initially in the stock market and things like that. But we saw a steady volume, and it's across the board. So that's a great news that the CIU was open and people were very responsive to all the changes in the program. So yeah.
Thank you so much. Moving on to the next question. One of the clients have asked how tax-free haven status of CARICOM has been becoming beneficial to the Caribbean citizens. So I'll redraft the question this way. Being a Caribbean national and being an Antigua passport holder, does that allow me to become a tax-free citizen and I can do trading, import, export? Prime Minister and Ms. Charmaine, please, your insights on that.
Prime Minister, I would like to clarify here. Rida, your customer's concern is that are they taxed on global income? Or if so, they're concerned.
For now, they're asking only an import in the Caribbean, and then yes, they can add to, after the Caribbean, they can add it to the other countries as well.
Right, so there's no harmonized tax regime within the Caribbean region. However, in the case of Antigua and Barbuda, we have easily one of the most attractive tax regimes. So for example, there is no personal income tax. Your gross revenue is net revenue. And this applies to all income. There's absolutely no tax on your worldwide income or any income derived from trade in Antigua and Barbuda. In addition, we also offer up to 25 years tax-free concessions on large investment projects. So we also have easily one of the most attractive investment regime or let's say incentive regime within the Caribbean region.
Ms. Charmaine, your insights on the same, please, if you don't mind.
Well, I think this is one of the attractive features of the program, that you're not taxed on worldwide income. And as the Prime Minister said, we have the best tax regime here. So once you are a citizen here, there's no personal income tax, and you're not taxed on income that is not generated in the country if you have a business, and you're not taxed on, there's no inheritance tax, and so on. So in terms of the program being attractive as it relates to tax, I would say that yes, choose Antigua for tax purposes.
And I like
yes, please.
There's no capital gains tax, and invariably we allow for the repatriation of profits. So if someone were to domicile a business here and the individual enjoys tax-free concessions, even though the income is personal income and the income is earned here, so assume it's a sole trader or joint trader, that income becomes net income. Gross income is net income. There's absolutely no tax applicable. However, we do have corporation taxes, but for certain investments, we do offer concessions up to 25 years, depending on the size of the investment. And they can repatriate the profits.
And it's irrespective of the industry, Honorable Prime Minister?
Correct. It's based entirely on the size of the investment.
Okay. Understood. Thank you so much. Thank you, Ms. Charmaine. Mr. Farooq, being one of the best programs.
Right. This is a great advantage of not having the tax in Antigua and Barbuda. But as I always believe that citizenship by investment program is popular with people who 99.9% people who intend to live outside, and we need to shed light on the global taxes. So if you get an Antigua and Barbuda passport, the question here is that will you be taxed globally or not? That's what's going to interest a lot of our customers. So Prime Minister, what would be your reply to that?
No personal income tax, neither on income earned locally or on their worldwide investments. Totally tax-free.
That's a great news.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. Thank you, Ms. Charmaine. Moving on to the next question. A client has asked, what are the major differences between being an economic citizen and citizen by descent? So that means maybe, Ms. Charmaine, he's trying to ask, if I am born Antiguan and if I acquire an Antiguan passport, is there a difference between any of that? Am I discriminated at any point in time, or am I given a favor at any one of these passports?
So Rita, Antigua and Barbuda does not have classes of citizens. So if you're a citizen, you are a citizen, and you are afforded the same rights and privileges as a native-born Antiguan. The only difference would be is your ability to vote. In that, in order to register as a voter, you would need to spend 1 month in Antigua. Prime Minister may correct me on that if that has changed.
That's correct.
Yes, you need to reside in Antigua 1 month before you can register to vote. And that is the only difference. And that actually applies to a native-born Antiguan as well. If you've been living outside of the country for an extended period and you're not on the voters list, you would have to come to Antigua and reside for an entire month in order to be put on the voters list and be eligible to vote in an election. So we don't have classes of citizens. If you're a citizen and you have the same rights and privileges. And
if I may add here, you know, Antigua and Barbuda is more representative of the Caribbean region than any other country. At least maybe about 55% of the country's population comprises individuals who are citizens by naturalization. And most of them are actually Caribbean nationals. You know, so there's no form of discrimination. A citizen is a citizen, and they all benefit from the same rights and freedoms. So we are very consistent in terms of how we treat our citizens, including our CIP citizens.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Honorable Prime Minister. Thank you, Ms. Charmaine. So, Mr. Farooq, your viewpoints on the same, please, if?
I think it's a pleasure. Spending 1 month in Antigua and Barbuda. So this is a great pleasure to spend that, because it's a really beautiful place. And leaves us with 1 day per island.
Well, you may be talking about our beaches, 365 beautiful beaches, the best in the world, and that does not include the beaches on our sister island, Barbuda. In fact, for those who may not be aware, Barbuda is a twin island state. There's Antigua, which is 108 square miles, and Barbuda, 62 square miles. Barbuda too has some very beautiful pink sand beaches. In Antigua, they're primarily white sand beaches and with turquoise water, very, very clean, unpolluted waters. So, I mean, in terms of beaches, they are invariably, many of them ranked the best in the world. And that's not a hyperbole, just a matter of fact.
Amazing.
Thank you so much. Moving on to the next question, Ms. Charmaine, I think because it's your domain, the Citizenship by Investment Unit, so you would be in a better position to understand and the question and answer it, and Honorable Prime Minister can add his insight to it later. The question is, does the citizenship extends to my brothers and sisters, or my siblings, to be precise?
Well, not at this point. The citizenship is for the eligible persons, the eligible dependents on your application, and currently the dependents are your spouse, your children, whether adoptive or biological, your parents, in-laws, and grandparents. We are currently looking at the definition of the dependents. It's actively being assessed right now, and perhaps in the very near future, we may be able to make some pronouncements as to changes in the definition. But currently, not siblings.
Let's say we're in for good news. I'm sorry.
Separately. The siblings can apply separately and obtain citizenship.
Correct, yes. Correct, but they're not eligible to be included as dependents on an application.
So that means if I have a passport, let's say, and I want to add my brother, I cannot add my brother, but I can sponsor my brother later. Correct. So that's a good news, right?
That's correct, that's correct.
Thank you so much, Honorable Prime Minister. Thank you, Ms. Charmaine. Mr. Farooq, so we cannot add, but I can sponsor my siblings in the application, other than my application later.
Correct.
So you would like to add something to it?
Yes, as the Prime Minister said, that the best way is put up a separate application, and you can add your siblings, your sibling to a separate application. But I must remind people that in the same application, it's you, your wife, your spouse, your children, your parents, and your spouse's parents. So it's the definition is.
And even grandparents.
Yes, grandparents also. Thank you, Rida.
Thank you so much. Moving on to the next question, Ms. Charmaine, it would be with you, and then of course eventually Honorable Prime Minister can add up to it. Client has asked, are there any new countries added in the list of visa-free travel? Or I would explain the question better if I can. Will there be any other countries added in the visa-free list, or is the cabinet in talking terms with any other potential?
So Rita, I think the Prime Minister may be best placed to answer this question.
Perfect.
Yes, the answer is yes. There are a few countries in which we are having negotiations. In fact, Ghana, as an example, we thought that we had visa-free access with Ghana, only to be told that that is not the case. And they have just recently advised that they put in the necessary systems in place to facilitate visa-free access. So we are actively expanding our list. Presently at 165, and the whole idea is to ensure that we achieve an unassailable lead and to demonstrate to the entire world that we have easily one of the strongest passports in the world.
It is always a good news at the end of the day.
Sure, pleasure.
Ms. Charmaine, you would like to add something? Your passport becoming stronger doesn't really mean that it will become more expensive. There are already so many programs and options for the clients under this CBIU Antigua. So I'm assuming the more the passport becomes stronger, the more people apply, and the flexibility is there as well.
Correct, and let's not forget the native-born Antiguans as well. We benefit from our passport being stronger. And, I just really want to underscore that this government is extremely responsive. We know that we operate in a dynamic industry, and so we are constantly looking at ways to improve our offerings on this program. So you can always expect good news to come out from this program.
I'll add here too that the strength of our passport is not seen exclusively from the standpoint of the amount of visa-free countries that our citizens could access, but perhaps most importantly, the integrity of our program. So we pride ourselves as operating easily the most transparent and accountable CIP program in the world. And again, no exaggeration. I mean, we publish routinely information on the citizenship program. We, however, keep the names of the beneficiaries confidential for security reasons, but outside of that, every cent collected and even how the funds are applied, how they are spent, we give an account half yearly to the Parliament of Antigua and Barbuda, and we even publish the information within the local media. So the integrity of the program is very important for us. And also the safeguards. Now, our passport, citizenship for that matter, is protected by the Constitution. So unless the individual obtains citizenship by fraudulent means, the citizenship is protected by the Constitution and cannot be frivolously revoked.
Thanks for clarification, Prime Minister, because a lot of people are concerned that will this citizenship, can it be revoked? And I think this is very important.
And even if someone would have obtained the passport through frivolous means, it cannot be automatically revoked. There is a process. It has to go to a tribunal, and the matter has to be litigated via the court. Very lengthy process, which in many instances would have taken years. So again, to revoke a citizenship is extremely difficult.
Yeah, because the general perception, what people in the Middle East always have, and which Charmaine clarified very successfully, is there's no different categories of citizenship. It's the same category, and it's
Correct.
the only right. And this is very important. You clarified that the citizenship cannot be revoked unless they had misrepresented their own application, which was the very basis of granting them citizenship.
And even there, where there's mischief, it has to go through a process. There's no automatic revocation. And again, you have to understand the population of Antigua and Barbuda, the population mix. It's a multicultural society. Let's say, citizens by birth, they're in the minority. Most of our citizens are actually naturalized citizens. So we could not pursue any policy or policies that will put the majority of the population at risk of losing their citizenship. So those rights are firmly enshrined within the Constitution of the country.
Excellent.
Thank you so much, Honorable Prime Minister. Thank you, Mr. Imran Farooq. We move on to the next question. Under what circumstances an application is rejected? Ms. Charmaine, over to you, please, for this one.
I like that question. Well, the Act actually clearly outlines under which circumstances that a file will be denied. If it is that they provided false information, they're deemed a security risk to the country. So the conditions are outlined clearly in the Act. Additionally, if you are denied a visa to a country to which we have visa-free access, that also will make you ineligible. Well, what I could tell you about our denial process, it really has evolved. And again, it's really testament to us listening to the industry. I think before we would just drop the hammer on you. Now we are seeking additional information. If something comes up during the due diligence assessment, we will seek to get more clarity from the applicant before a decision is taken. So what you will get is a really transparent and objective process. We're not just, we wouldn't just deny an application willy-nilly. It has to be that it falls under the criteria that's outlined in the legislation. Prime Minister, I don't know if you want to add anything.
Yes, please.
For instance, the denial of a visa. Now, someone, at a particular stage in life who may not have had sufficient resources could be denied a visa, and then that person could have grown, become a multi-millionaire, and will be eligible for a visa. Now, such a denial, someone who would have made an application and would have had such a denial, that cannot be cause to deny them the citizenship. Now, if on the other hand, the denial would have been recent and because of some security concerns that, one of our partner countries would have denied the application, then clearly we cannot provide the opportunity for them to circumvent the process. So what Charmaine says, there has to be some level of risk analysis to determine whether or not that person will be eligible.
Just one concern, Charmaine. When I know the most of the applicants get through, but in the event when somebody have a bad history and they get rejected, they do not get clear denial reasons. Now, nothing can be done there because you're bound with an agreement of the due diligence company. The reason for rejection is something which is, I know that it's 1% of the cases which gets rejected. So there, nothing, a revisit is required or cannot be done because of the agreement with the due diligence companies.
Charmaine, I think that's your question.
I think Ms. Charmaine is having a little technical issues. I think, Mr. Browne, if you can please put your insight to it.
Okay, Charmaine seems as though she has an issue there. But, generally speaking, wherever there's derogatory information, we do not process those applications. We have had 1 or 2 cases, though, in which individuals may have been involved in minor infractions in which they do not represent any significant security risk. And we have reviewed them, we have processed them. But if anyone is involved in money laundering, terrorism financing, or any egregious financial act, then clearly they will not be eligible. And as far as practicable, we seek not to process applications with any form of derogatory information. So if we were to process, it will be on an exceptional basis and maybe due to some minor infraction.
If I would like to add something, and you would like to correct me, Honorable Prime Minister, if I have got a rejection from the UK and I would like to apply for Antigua and Barbuda, the process would be that I get a visa, I apply for a visa, I get a visa, I go to the UK, and then I come back and then I apply? Or is there like...
We'll certainly encourage the person to reapply. Generally speaking, individuals who are eligible for a visa would not be unreasonably denied, the request. So whenever there is such a denial, then, that in itself is a red flag. So, that reason has been utilized for denying certain individuals. But if the individual can prove to us that he or she is an individual of substance and that, the denial would not have been as a result of any criminal suspicion or any criminal action, and clearly, in our due diligence, we make sure that anyone who is involved in any criminal action is automatically ineligible. But again, sometimes people denied applications for various reasons. Could be maybe incomplete documentation. So we have asked the unit to look at each application on its merit and to determine whether or not, they can process if it's a low level of risk, if the visa initially may have been denied for lack of documentation. Or sometimes, people's wealth may be such at the time when they apply that they may not have had the type of financial resources, and the person or the individuals may have grown since, and their station in life may be significantly different. So we've asked the unit to look at those situations, and where the risk profile is low, then we can possibly approve the application.
If I had a good history to the UK, and just recently I got rejected because they have a very standard format of rejection. So for instance, they tick mark that they are not satisfied with your application. My previous history can help doing the application for Antigua in some cases?
Traveling. Well, again, as I said, I just gave you the exception. I mean, generally speaking, we do not want to be accused of circumventing the visa process for those countries that give us access. And in as much as I'm saying that they could be the exception, you know, almost invariably, where there are those rejections, we try not to process because it may be construed as a loophole, you know, that if you can't get a visa to going into the United Kingdom, or let's say some other country that we have visa-free access, that you can get citizenship to facilitate it. We don't want to be an accessory to, you know, entrance into a country that which otherwise will deny the person entry.
Thank you. So what I understand, Mr. Farooq, is it's better to have a visit visa of the country and then apply for the Antigua passport to make your case more clear, right, sir?
You don't have to have a visa to the country unless you are using, like the UK, for example, as a gateway to come into Antigua to catch a flight. What we're saying though, if you apply and you were rejected, that in itself is a red flag. And generally speaking, your application will be denied because we do not wish to be utilized as an accessory, or let's say as a country that will provide you access into a country that would have otherwise denied you entry.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
We have certain obligations to withhold or to uphold insofar as our international partners are concerned. And whenever visa-free access is actually granted to a country, I mean, up to a specific level of conduct is expected that you will do nothing to compromise the integrity of that country. I mean, for example, the United Kingdom would have denied an application and we decided to issue citizenship and the person turns out to be a terrorist, then, you know, we become vicariously liable for facilitating access of that person in the United Kingdom. So the risk is such that, generally speaking, the application will be denied. I mean, what I said earlier was more like an exception that could be proven whereby the person may have applied sometime before, may not. But then again, what that individual could do, out of an abundance of caution, is to reapply now that his position in life would have, his station in life would have changed, and get that access so that we are not accused of circumventing the visa process of any country.
Thank you so much, Honorable Prime Minister, for this insight. Mr. Imran, please, if you can put your valuable insights on the same question.
I think Prime Minister has clarified completely that about the visa-free policy. I'm getting a lot of questions about newborn applicants. So if a family has got the citizenship, what happens if they have a newborn baby, if they have a new entry? So,
right. So that child will also get citizenship. My understanding is that there's a small fee to be paid. I'm not sure of the amount. At one point it was 25,000, but it was reduced significantly. Maybe, again, I don't want to quote the amount. When Charmaine gets back on, she'll give you the precise amount.
Yes,
but we told at the time that the $25,000 that we're charging, that it was not competitive, and we have since reduced it significantly. If I'm not mistaken, it's probably about $5,000 or $7,000, somewhere in that region, but a significantly low amount.
Right. So a newborn baby can be added for a very, very reasonable amount.
Correct. Correct.
Which makes the program by descent. So, for example, I have a passport, we get married, we have a child, that's how my child will automatically be added in the application.
Correct.
Perfect. What happens, Prime Minister, if I was in the part of my application with the father, and then eventually I got married, I have a passport now, how can I add my spouse in the application then?
If the spouse was not a part of it, again, I am not too sure how we treated that one specifically. I'll have to have Charmaine answer that one.
I completely understand that. Thank you so much. Mr. Farooq, your insights, please.
Yes, spouse can be added because if there's no multi-marriage issue, the spouse can be very easily added. So there's no issue with that, but obviously you need to follow the procedure and the spouse needs to go through the due diligence and whatever the fees are.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question is regarding the West Indies option. People would like to have a little bit of explanation.
University.
The university option, yes.
So that's an option costing $150,000 and it's a flat fee. So, you know, normally with the family options for each additional member beyond the 4, they will add probably about 15, for other countries, $15,000 or $20,000 per person. There's no additionality. And this is specifically targeting large families. So you'll find for families of 5 and more, this is the most competitive, price competitive option, in the market. And what is happening here, the funds that we earn under the university option will be utilized for funding the university campus here, which I said earlier would literally help all of the countries within the OASIS Caribbean, because it is the citizens of the OASIS Caribbean and residents of the OASIS Caribbean we're trying to help by making a university education more accessible. And Antigua and Barbuda has chosen to carry the bulk of the funding and to use the CIP as one of the areas in which we could partially fund the university. We also have a tax that we have introduced for companies to pay. It's actually a 10% tax on profits, which goes to the university to fund the university. So that is really the major source of funding, and the CIP option is supplementary funding for the university.
Perfect, thank you so much. We have a next question for you, Prime Minister, please. What is the validity of the passport for Antigua and Barbuda?
In terms of years, it's a 10-year, well, 5 years in the first instance, but renewable. And I think thereafter up to 10 years.
So the first year is for 5 years, and 5 years you stay there for 5 days, and then it's renewed automatically for a period of 10 years. Understood, okay. Another question, it's an anonymous attendee, so I wouldn't really know the name. Those applying for this passport, how do we apply for visa to other countries, for instance, the US?
So what is expected is that you make the application within your country of citizenship, original citizenship, or let's say birth, or where you're domiciled. Because the problem is, if you, for example, make an application in Barbados, where you have the US Embassy that services the Caribbean, Eastern Caribbean and Barbados, they will ask you to, they will refer you back to the embassy in your home country or your resident country.
Yeah, I wanted to answer that, Rida, also, because I think as Prime Minister said, it is you apply to the country of your residence, and first of all, you've got about 130 odd countries where you got a visa-free access, so you don't need your visa for anywhere in Europe, most of the places in Far East, and so on and so forth. Canada or US, these are two popular destinations where our client needs to apply for a visa, and because they got such a strong passport, most of the clients get a 10 years visa in UAE or anywhere else. So
correct.
Thank you so much, Prime Minister. Thank you, Mr. Imran. Prime Minister, I think in the beginning you mentioned that you suggested development of alternate payments systems there in Antigua and Barbuda. So do you recommend any other Caribbean, there's a Caribbean currency, then there is a US dollar currency. Do you recommend any other digital means of currencies as well, or it's just these are the two mediums of currencies?
Absolutely. In fact, we have amended our law to provide for settlements in various currencies in US, Canadian, Euros, RMBs, and even cryptocurrencies. So we can accept payments or CIP program in a number of currencies to include cryptocurrency payments.
Perfect, thank you so much. Sir, Mr. Imran, next question is for you. Is there any renewal fee for the passport granted, or Honorable Prime Minister, if you can answer that as well?
Can you repeat your?
One of the practitioners, the renewal fee for a passport.
Yes.
Sorry, I didn't get it. There's a glitch. Yes, well, Rida?
There's a client asking the renewal fee for the passport and the time frame. I think Honorable Prime Minister would be answering that.
Renewal fee will be $1,200 for 10 years passport, and generally it takes about 2 weeks to 4 weeks time. There's an urgent fee. You can get sooner, but in a regular way, you get in 2 to 4 weeks time.
Thank you. Honorable Prime Minister, is there any way to expedite the application? Ms. Charmaine was discussing earlier, in 6 to 8 weeks we can get an approval. But is there any way to expedite the process, if any?
Right, so we're about to introduce an option in which you can pay a premium and to have the documentation expedited sooner, or the citizenship expedited sooner, provided the documentation is complete. So on the basis that the prospective citizen is able to supply all the documentation on a timely basis, then we can certainly introduce that fast track method so that we can provide this sooner. And these are obviously for non-complicated, straightforward applications.
Thank you so much. Mr. Imran, there's a client asking a question, when do we have to make the payments? So I think it'll be better that you explain the pre-owned approval.
Basically, the beauty about the program is that you don't pay your donation or invest into real estate unless and until you get in principle approval. So that's a fantastic option. And so you pay your due diligence fee and application fee of $1,000, and the government is going to vet you, check everything, and then issue you in principle approval. And you will make your major investment only after in principle approval.
Understood. Thank you. Thank you so much. Prime Minister, we call it the pay on approval program. That's how we explain it to the clients as well. You pay your due diligence, you pay everything. Once you get an approval, then you pay the bigger chunk. That's what Mr. Imran has explained as well.
Just a question here. Charmaine apparently cannot get in. She says that she needs access. She's been trying for the last 20 minutes to get back on, but you need to give her access. She's trying to sign on, but is not receiving access.
Noted, Honorable Prime Minister. We will get it done.
Yes.
Moving on till the time we add her in this webinar. Moving on, I'll ask you a question, Honorable Prime Minister. You were discussing about the business establishments, and there's a tax-free requirement there where somebody is joining up a business in Antigua and Barbuda. We can establish any business. There was a client in my last webinar who asked a question: if I want to open up a franchise for an eatery or a McDonald's franchise or any other, to be precise, the government helps the passport holder to do that as well?
Well, we have an open economy, and even if you're not a citizen, you can establish a business here. But certainly, as a citizen, you have protection, constitutional protection, and investor protection from the various laws, domestic laws. But it's an open economy, and in terms of the limited requirements to operate. Having an attorney to form a company, that could be done within maybe a matter of 24 to 36 hours. And that person, provided he or she has the capital, can make all arrangements and start a trade. There's no restriction, there's no impediment, there's no licensing requirements. There may be a requirement for registration, just to make sure that we have a complete database, but there's no impediment to trade. We have a totally open economy, and anyone can establish a business here.
Okay.
Prime Minister, for somebody to get extra benefits like tax breaks and things like that, what kind of investment you generally entertain to give them those special privileges? Right.
So anything over 100 million EC dollars, an investment in excess of 100 million EC dollars, which is about 40 million US dollars, so 37 to be precise,
right.
Will get tax-free concessions up to 25 years. It's about 10 million. We may reduce the amount of corporate tax-free years down to probably about between 10 and 15. But then again, it's contingent on how many jobs will be created. So in as much as it is the size of the investment that will determine the number of years, we also pay attention to the amount of employment opportunities that are created by the entity, and even the sector as well. So you'll find, for example, that the tourism sector is an area that we're seeking to grow rapidly, and tourism sector enjoys perhaps the best concessions of all projects, all sectors. And even agriculture and manufacturing, they too also enjoy very generous concessions. One of the areas that we recently agreed to incentivize is the area of high-end luxury villas, recognizing that there's an increased demand as a consequence of COVID for those type of villas. People are trying to avoid the clustered hotels with all those touch points with hundreds of people, in a given day. So we're also providing, concessions for those constructions, people who want to build high-end villa that they can eventually rent through Airbnb whenever they're not resident on the island. And the property itself could be like a vacation home, vacation retreat, for wealthy individuals. And when they're not here, they're property managers who can manage the property on their behalf.
How receptive you are for crypto industry, or somebody wants to apply for a banking license?
Well, with the crypto industry, we have the regulatory regime in place, and we have recently attracted two of the largest players globally. We have, for example, Ambassador 𝐂𝐢𝐭𝐢𝐳𝐞𝐽, who has been resident here for probably about 10 years. He is, he's investing heavily in that space. We just attracted as well Mr. Roger Ver, and between them, they have been tasked with the responsibility of assisting us in literally establish Antigua and Barbuda as the cryptocurrency, let's say, hub of the Caribbean, to ensure that we grow this sector rapidly. As you know, it's a disruptive sector in terms of financial transactions, but we believe that the blockchain-based technology is here to stay because of the immutability and certainly traceability of the technology. And the key thing is to make sure that we have reputable investors who are well vested with assets here, and to make sure that investors are protected, and at the same time that the operators are not involved in any form of terrorism financing or money laundering. So far, as I said, we have two major players, and we expect to see a very rapid increase in the sector in terms of the amount of investments. In fact, very shortly, I'm told that there will be a cryptocurrency exchange that will be established here. And they also have an arrangement with the European Bank that will help them to assist with the movement of money in terms of the convertibility of cryptos to fiat currency and fiat currency to cryptos. So that is now proven to be a very exciting space and a significant growth area for Antigua and Barbuda. And I believe that we are way ahead of the rest of the Caribbean in terms of growing the sector. And that's an area in which we're seeking to attract additional investors. We're going primarily for the high-end investors, individuals who would have had significant assets vested here. We do not wish to attract any fly-by-nights who may be seeking to, let's say, get involved in nefarious acts to include money laundering and terrorism financing, as well as position themselves to fleece investors.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Honorable Prime Minister. Moving on to the next question, please. In the current situation, in the current time frame, have you ever noticed that donation is higher compared to that of real estate, Honorable Prime Minister?
Our donation has always been higher. I mean, that is a primary area that we have been promoting, primarily to raise revenue to supplement government's borrowing requirements and even to cover some of our routine expenditure. The real estate option, is not as potent as perhaps it ought to be. And one of the reasons too, you'll find that the infrastructure here in Antigua and Barbuda, is significantly more developed than the other OECS Caribbean countries. So they have great opportunity to expand their, let's say, property infrastructure, in the sense that there's a greater need in those countries compared to Antigua and Barbuda that traditionally has been, even without CIP, has been attracting a lot of investments in a number of high-end properties. In fact, we have the largest amount of high-end properties per capita within the Caribbean. We have a number of developments even dating back to the 1950s and 60s. So, for example, you have Mill Reef Club, which is a club that is owned by wealthy Americans going back to the times of the Mellon family. In fact, the Mellon family, they're one of the notable families that own properties there. You also have Jumbi Bay, that's a small offshore island. Typical property values there range between 15 million US and 50 million US. And there's several others, private resorts, high-end resorts. In fact, the most recent one that we attracted is on our sister island, Barbuda. And that is known as the Discovery Bay project. Discovery Bay is a US franchise, high-end franchise, and they have properties in Nevada, Wyoming, in Bahamas, Bakers Bay, Bahamas, and they have the El Dorado property in Cabo, Mexico. So we are now transitioning Antigua and Barbuda as a high-end destination to attract wealthy individuals and to reduce our dependence on, the large volumes of low-end tourists. And COVID itself would have justified that transition that we're making. Even Ambassador Calvin here, he's about to spend about $500 million to do another high-end property at a former Jolly Beach resort, which is a 500-room resort. So we're now going to literally break that down and, transform it into a 100-room resort, but high-end resort that will be catering for extremely wealthy people.
Thank you so much, Honorable Prime Minister. Mr. Farooq, thank you so much for all the valuable insight both of the gentlemen have shared. I would like to thank Charmaine as well. We could not add her because there's a technical glitch. But gentlemen, it was immense pleasure hearing you out. We have a lot of questions that are coming in, so I am hoping that these questions will be answered later. For all those who are participating from Dubai, from the GCC itself, from Pakistan, from other countries, I would really like to thank all of you for joining here and making the event successful. Prime Minister, it was an honor to hear from you, and I hope to see you soon in our office when the situation ends and we can meet it in person and again.
Absolutely, certainly a pleasure. And just to remind all of our participants that Antigua and Barbuda represents the best value for money. And we invite all individuals to become a citizen or potentially to become a resident of Antigua and Barbuda through our normal digital visa program.
Thank you very much, Honorable Prime Minister. Thank you, Rida.
Thank you.
I will call and thank Charmaine personally. Thank you very much, the participants. It was a great response. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.